far away. I'm out of range. Get closer. How generous. I can't do that. Inventory is full. It's too far away. I can't do that. out of range. I don't know. I can't move.
you grabbing shit?
Hold on.
Do you got
So you
shit stuck
telling
in
me-
your ass while you're taking?
So you telling me that y'all just let the doodle fall in the toilet? Y'all don't catch it every time?
Yo.
I am about to leave, bro.
How do y'all take a shit? I must have seen this shit wrong.
My nigga.
I've been catching my shit all these years.
Nah, I'm more disgusted than I feel like I can't continue.
What are you talking about?
My stomach
So
is
hold on,
turning.
so y'all just sit there and shit come right out. No way.
What happens if you got the runs or something like that?
Yo,
What do you do then?
That shit, you wash your hands. Why you think people wash their hands?
Yo, you shit in your hand, bro?
With tissue.
This is worse than I thought.
Oh. I'm fine. How are you, Susie James?
Benjamin Rich, aka Bald and Bankrupt, is a 48-year-old British travel YouTuber who has conquered the travel vlogging niche, who came into the spotlight through his documentation of his travels around the world, most notably through post-Soviet states. However, after an army of investigators sifted through his content, the internet is painting a darker picture of the Bald and Bankrupt. In order to find out who Bald is and understand his story, we need to go back. Travel channels are a fantastic way to explore the world without having to go to the back end of nowhere. However, Ben isn't your typical world traveller who goes to Bali to find themselves. He's a genuine explorer who travels to extremely remote areas that most Western eyeballs have never seen. In the early 90s, Ben went on a month trip backpacking through India and fell in love with the culture, so stayed for an extended period of time and opened a small hotel business during his stay. He also stayed in Moscow, Russia for 2 months in 1993. This is where his fascination for exploring and interest in Soviet history was inflamed. He has stated that he has an ex-wife who's Belarusian, however filed for a divorce in 2001. He learned the Russian language and had a business in the UK that went bankrupt. Hence the name Bald and Bankrupt. Some people have alleged that Bald committed credit card fraud, which apparently resulted in him creating different aliases and ultimately leaving the country. One of his alleged aliases, titled The Fantasist, stated in an online forum, "I owed £30,000 on credit cards and bank loans here in the UK about 5 years back. There was no way I could pay it back. I decided to change my surname to my mother's maiden name and changed address and never heard from them again." In the UK, if you owe £30,000 or more, you can declare bankruptcy. But how do we know the Fantasist or any of the aliases is Bald and Bankrupt? Let's keep digging. In 2018, YouTuber Harold Balder convinced Ben to create a YouTube channel, where in June he would begin to document his travels through India. After establishing his channel with his India content, he moved to Russia in February 2019. His move to Russia and exploration of post-Soviet states would be the catalyst for his rise on YouTube. He gained praises and national headlines for exploring unheard history and stories through candid conversations with locals and drunken adventures through remote towns. A lot of people also loved his no-nonsense video style, with simple editing and informative content. While he travelled, he was also occasionally accompanied by his girlfriend, Alina, a Belarusian woman he met before his YouTube channel. His travels even inspired him to write a book about his experiences travelling through parts of Belarus affected by the Chernobyl disaster, under another alias called Arthur Chichester. In November 2019, following a video he filmed on a train to Chechnya, Bald was forced to apologise on camera by Chechen authorities for referring to a local woman as a chick.
Some sort of Chechen chick turns up and shares my compartment with me, and I can put on some romantic lighting. Oh, salam alaikum, sister. Would you like a glass of Baltica?
Salam alaikum, все люди здесь в Республике Чечня. Меня зовут Бенджамин, я из Англии. Я влогер, у меня есть канал на YouTube. Случайно что-то плохо бывало. Пару дней назад я сделал мой фильм на YouTube, оставил там. И я говорил что-то, которое не были красивые, честно говоря, про женщину в Чечне.
Being in an extremely politically sensitive area in the world, this wouldn't be the last time that Bald would have run-ins with the authorities. In May 2022, Bald was arrested outside a derelict spaceport by authorities in the steppe of Kazakhstan. He managed to get into the derelict spaceport and see the Buran. The Buran was a Soviet space shuttle which was created due to fears of the Western powers being able to weaponize space. He managed to find the location of the Buran shed due to the help of an urban explorer photographer and had to walk 30 kilometers to the Cosmodrome in remote Kazakhstan with his female companion Alina.
Bald and Bankrupt.
Peak Soviet. Peak everything. We made it. There's 2 Borans in here. The second one's over there. Wow. This is a ship that was going to go to space. The final frontier. This was the peak. The tip of the spear of human knowledge and development went into building this. Look at it. Imagine. It started with Sputnik. And we ended up with Iran.
Which resulted in international headlines, although Bald stated after meeting the FSB and a few cups of tea that they were released and received a roughly $50 fine. On the 1st of September 2022, Bald posted a vlog to his channel titled "The Journey is Over," announcing that he had been arrested and subsequently ordered to leave Russia and banned from returning. He was banned due to previously calling Vladimir Putin crazy and posted a fundraiser for Ukraine. Bald's police interview was published in Russian media following his arrest and expulsion from the country. He was charged with discrediting the Russian armed services, and it was alleged that Russian authorities could have given him up to 15 years in prison.
Два причины. Первая причина, знаете, запады в Англии, наши СМИ постоянно делают давление, что, как сказать, ну, против России, можно так сказать, и особо против ваш президент. И, конечно, это было влияние на меня, я слышал это только этого. И я был там, когда я был там в Украине, это было очень рано, война, я думаю, что это сумасшедшее решение. Я не понял в это время совсем подробности, почему это все произошло. Просто, война, почему. И, ну да, я сказал, что я сказал, я писал, я думал, это может быть верно. И тоже вторая причина. Вы, может быть, не понимаете это, но когда у вас есть лицо на YouTube, если вы хотите зарабатывать деньги еще, вам надо что-то сказать, что они хотят слышать, и что люди хотят слышать. Если нет, это будет проблема для вас.
Underneath the video, one online commenter stated, "That man is bullshitting to save his life. I bet after this he wouldn't want to be in Russia anyway. Looks terrifying." Another person stated, "As a Ukrainian, the video of Bald is what everyone would have done in his position. We have no hard feelings about the interrogation. I'm glad we get to see his adventures further." So from the surface level, the story I've told so far is an unusual one, because not everyone goes backpacking through post-Soviet countries, gets arrested, and documents all of it. But it's a fairly straightforward tale of a YouTuber's rise. However, if you scratch the surface, a darker picture is being painted. On Reddit, an army of 12,500 users joined the subreddit Bald and Balder Dossier, a subreddit dedicated to asking the question whether Bald and Bankrupt and his friend Harold Balder are sex tourists and prolific pickup artists. So what makes people believe that Bald is a pickup artist? People began to notice that in a lot of his videos, his language and the way he interacts with women is a bit suspect. In his very first video, titled "I Love India's Policewomen," you can see that throughout the video, it comes across as extremely weird and slightly predatory in the way he describes the policewomen.
I was in need of some form of salvation, something beautiful to cast my scratched eyeballs upon. And then, as I crossed the final mountain pass and descended into the green valleys of Himachal Pradesh, leaving the northern mountains of Ladakh behind, I saw what at first appeared to be a mirage, so perfectly did they stand out against the chaotic background of the city of Dharamsala. But they were no mirage. They were Indian traffic cops, and they were beautiful. With their neatly pressed, figure-hugging uniforms and blue caps beneath which they wore their hair in immaculate hairdos, I stayed in the city an extra day, for no other reason than to gaze upon them. In fact, I'd often stop to ask needless directions just to see their smiles up close, maybe feel a slight hint of their breath on my skin, and to prove to myself that these angels of the north were in fact real, and not just figments of my imagination.
Reddit users then discovered that a user by the name of Vakuta/The Fantasist would post in Rushvi Forum and Naughty Nomad, well-known pickup artist forums. So how do we know if Vakuta, the fantasist, and the other aliases are bald and bankrupt? Well, Vakuta described in detail a charge that he and 2 of his friends were acquitted of in Winchester in the UK. Vakuta's description of the events, including timeline, area, and particulars of the case, all allegedly match exactly the reporting of the trial in the Daily Echo newspaper. The newspaper describes one of the defendants as a person called Benjamin Rich Swift. After the trial, Vakuta said he dropped the Swift part of his name and ran away from £30,000 credit card debt. Vakuta also describes living on the Isle of Wight at the time. Reddit users continued with their proof, stating that Vakuta also describes himself as being bald, 6'3" in height, being from Jewish heritage, moved from the Isle of Wight to Brighton, supporting proof, bald, 6'3" in height, being from Jewish heritage, moved from the Isle of Wight to Brighton, supporting Chelsea, having a Belarusian girlfriend, and how when they first visited India, he ran a guest house for 4 years, which all matches the bald and bankrupt's timeline. Vakuta also allegedly details his learning of the Russian language, love for all things Soviet, and his many travels around Russia. Vakuta confirmed suspicions when a user who lives in Belarus stated in a forum that he met Vakuta, aka Mr. Bald, and then listed Harold Balder, who as we all know, is a longtime friend of Benjamin. More disturbingly, Vakuta describes the tactics he used to sleep with local women, the most successful being to befriend local men and babushkas, earning their adulation and respect by showing them fake pictures of himself in affluent settings. In his words on the Rushvi forums, he states, "By the following day, they will have told all of their friends, and more importantly, the young women, of the wealthy foreigner who has just entered their shithole of a town. By the following evening, I can drop the babushkas and fake male friendships and move on to their women." Vakuta calls this the Schindler technique. Most of the links used in the subreddit to show proof of the Rushvi forums no longer work. However, there is plenty of screenshots and proof of these fake photos via Bald's old Russian social media accounts, where you can see him getting off a private jet with the caption, "Arriving in Milan for Fashion Week." There are many entries on these forums from Vakuta that I won't divulge into, as we'd be here all day and they aren't really YouTube friendly. However, the majority play out as diary entries of his sex escapades through various countries with vile descriptions and complete lack of respect for the people and women of these countries. Bald is also a big proponent of Andrew Tate and has stated that he has had conversations with the man himself. Regardless of what your opinion is on the Tate brothers, stating your approval of Andrew Tate is always going to ruffle some feathers and create controversy. Bald stated on a YouTube community post that have since all been deleted, "I've been offline for a while and just discovered that Top G has been cancelled. In the past, we defied strongmen who were warriors and thinkers and built sculptures of them in public places. Nowadays, we defile men like that and ban their words from public space in case they upset someone. I know I'd rather have a night out with Tristan and Andrew than the pussies who were offended by their words." One online commenter stated, "Personal beliefs is one thing, complete lack of morality is another. I couldn't care less if Bald was right wing, left wing, admired Hitler or Stalin, or whatever. His choice. But one of the things you cannot forgive is his sexism, misogyny, and racism. Plenty of evidence of him referring to poor and often foreign women in vile, derogatory terms. Those aren't something one can accept or turn a blind eye to. I found Bald's videos entertaining, and I've probably watched 80% plus of his entire YouTube channel. But the more you learn about the guy, the harder it is to justify supporting him." Another commenter stated, "This is honestly old news. I found out about all of this like 2 years ago while reading the comments on his channel. I also read similar things on Johnny FD's channel. There's a reason why both of them are friends." Bald last posted to his main channel 1 month ago and 6 months ago on his second channel, and has also deleted all of his photos from his Instagram profile. Some of Bald's diehard fans are even divulging into conspiracy theories, contemplating whether the sex tourism comments is a character assassination from Russian trolls. This whole scenario in general is a very murky and sensitive topic that highlights a very different side to a YouTube creator that many people still love. So where will this story unravel next? Who knows?
he said someone's going to reach out to you in the next couple of months and I have a business opportunity for you. It's up to you whether or not you choose to go with it. But he said you can make a lot of money, you can earn a lot of money. And then that started a whole nother chapter for me.
Today's guest is Germano Tomasetti. He is a Canadian criminal and mafia affiliate. He made millions of dollars around the world laundering money for criminal groups and pulling scams like identity theft. This guy ran scams in 4 continents in 7 years. He had bank accounts all over the world. He was rubbing shoulders with some of the most ruthless Albanian and Italian criminal gangs. He lived in South America. He was laundering money through Panamanian bank accounts. This guy is like a James Bond novel. It was wild. You're gonna love this episode. He told us some stuff that was truly too crazy to show on the YouTube. You can hear that on the bonus episode if you go over to patreon.com/TheConnect Show, and make sure to check out his book coming out called The Winnipeg Story. Without further ado, I give you Germano Tomasetti right here on The Connect.
Sometimes we actually have that choice in life, like that one choice that changes everything. That same day or the same week, I lost $250,000, which was all my money at the time.
That's when I see lights behind me start to flash. And I didn't even think, I just hit it. I was driving like my life depended on it. Then I parked the car, hopped out, closed the door, and I started running.
And he pulls out a burner, a shank, like 6 inches. And he passes it to me. And he goes, here, that's yours. Don't ever leave the cell block without this. He was the reason I made it out of that place alive.
Germano Tomasetti.
Tomasetti, yeah.
I'm not a betting man,
Yeah,
but if I had to gamble, I'd say it's Italian.
correct. Yeah.
You're the first Canadian we've had on the show, man.
That's great. That's
You're from
great.
Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. My family is from Calgary.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That is news to me.
So we knew a lot about Winnipeg growing up. We always associated it with being a rough place.
Yep.
A
You're not
working
wrong.
class place.
Yep.
Tell us about it. How was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, so it was, if you want to compare it to something in the U.S., I would say something like Detroit. You know what I mean? Just blue collar, hardworking people, and a city that slept on a lot. You know what I mean? The whole idea of what I wanted to do with the book was put it out there because there's so many interesting stories. There's very interesting people, but because it's this blue collar place that kind of gets ignored, right?
Nobody would think that a Canadian would look like you.
Right.
You look like you own a pizza shop in the outer boroughs of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Are there a lot of Italian Canadians in Winnipeg?
In Winnipeg, yeah, definitely. So the country's pretty split up. Like if you look at the northern and southern Italians, obviously everybody knows like in Quebec and Montreal with the Sicilian mob and stuff like that. And
Right.
then Ontario is more Calabrian, and Winnipeg is, I'd say it's a good mix of both. You know what I mean? Winnipeg itself, on the other side of things, beside it being a blue collar city, it's also a very important place in the underworld, and in Canada's underworld, because we're dead center, right? We're the Midwest, so everything that comes from Vancouver has to pass through us, and everything that comes from the ports in Montreal and in Ontario also have to pass through us. Right. So it was an important piece of the puzzle for a lot of people. You look at a lot of the bikers and the organized crime and stuff like that. Winnipeg's always been a key place, and if people dig deep enough, even on Google or whatever else, you'll find that a lot of people wanted it. A lot of people wanted to kind of take it over, but it's almost kind of this freelance place. It's like everyone's kind of out there doing their own thing. There's no real boss. There's no real control of the city. It's just kind of independent groups doing what they want, and they all mesh together well and
Fascinating. Who are those groups?
So obviously the Italians are in there. They have to be anywhere in North America, right? But there's also our big foreign group out there is Filipinos, right? So we have one of the, if not the largest, Filipino communities in Winnipeg and Manitoba, and after them, Ukrainians have actually been there for quite a while, Polish. And then, you're going to see the bikers coming in constantly just because of, it's almost like a way station.
Are native gangs present in the city?
Definitely.
I think I saw something about how native gangs are pretty wild in Saskatchewan in general. No, I'm sorry, Manitoba.
No, but you're not wrong with Saskatchewan though either, because we're very similar, right? We're both prairie provinces, and we have a lot of the same ideologies and the same criminal criminal groups and stuff like that. There's definitely, you know, Aboriginal gangs and Indian gangs. They're very heavy because they have the numbers, right?
Right.
So if you wanted to look at who's the biggest group in Winnipeg, it's definitely them because there's just so many of them. They worked within Canada, they worked with U.S. groups and stuff like that, but they didn't really branch out to South America, Colombia, Italy, any of these other places, right? So
what, when you were growing up, I don't know how old you are.
35. I just
Okay.
turned 35, yeah.
So when you were growing up, what was the big racket? What was the money maker that you were either involved in or, you know, you had family members or community members that was
So what age
involved
are we
in?
talking here? Like,
Well, take us back from the beginning. Do you have wise guys being Italian? Do you have, you know, Sicilian or Italian mafia in your family?
so I come from a background, Calabrese, Calabrian, and Abruzzese from Abruzzo, which is close to Lazio, close to Rome and stuff like that. There's definitely members in my family that are in organized crime. You'll probably notice this just from the people that you've talked to even before me. We don't like to say certain words. We don't like to say certain organizations. So I'll refer to someone as Calabrian. I'll refer to someone as Albanian. I'll refer to someone as Chinese or whatever. I'm not going to say actual groups, and that's just out of the respect of the people that I've worked with throughout the years. That's the way that they are. They don't like to be mentioned.
So if somebody's involved in organized crime, you call them a Calabrian? That's like the code word?
No, see that for
Like
me
how do
it's
you
just
how do
like
you refer to a mobster, say of Italian origin? In the U.S., it's a wise guy. They don't like saying mafia.
We don't even say
How do you-
mobster, bro. Like we don't in Canada, we don't speak like that. Like and that's my experience with it. I'm not saying that nobody speaks like that because you know everybody is definitely influenced from you know mob culture. Like and we're talking about American mafia, La Cosa Nostra, that kind of thing. But we just refer to people as who they are, like their ethnic backgrounds. Do you know what I mean? We're not going to say the name of the organization because a lot of these are still secret. You know some names. For instance, you know, we were talking earlier, and I was talking about the podcast that you did, the episode that you did that introduced me to you, and that was the episode that you talked about Cartagena. So the group that you talk about there, that you know you were connected with and that you knew, I know is a different name now. Right?
yeah.
So that's another thing. Names are changing and factions are changing and stuff like that.
Totally.
So for me, okay, let's take it back to the beginning. I didn't get involved into serious crime, and that means, you know, when I got into money laundering and I got into debt collections for organized crime and stuff like that, till I was about 26. So that doesn't mean that I wasn't doing illegal activity earlier. No, when I was younger, I was doing stupid. You know what I mean? I was, you know, I was in the streets with some of my friends, African gangs and stuff like that, and we would rob people or whatever like that. I tried to stay out of it, to be honest. I hung around with a lot of guys that were doing dirt, but I was trying not to. I didn't like drug dealing. It wasn't for me.
Is there meth up in the middle of Canada?
Winnipeg is starting to become a location for that, which really sucks. You know what I mean? Because that hard shit, bro, like whether it's crack or whether it's meth, or you know fentanyl's a
Sure.
you know huge problem everywhere right now in North America, including my city.
Yeah.
And that's why you see so many wars going on. You know what I mean? Like there's an internal struggle right now excuse me, in Montreal, and there has been for years, because Montreal is like everybody wants that. The Americans want it. The organized crime groups, whoever it is, you know, Italian, Irish, French, they all want that port because it's just, if you have that, you have the whole northeast section, right? So we're talking about Boston as well. We're talking about New York. We're talking about not just Canada, right? And if you really, again, you dive into the history, you'll see that, you know, there was an attempt back in the day from the Bananos to try and whack out the Montreal boss, and that failed. And our guys, like the Canadian gangsters, ended up whacking out their boss.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You guys beat us?
You can look at it. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just such a rich port. There's so much money in Canada now. Just the other day, the biggest bust ever in Toronto history happened. So it was $90 million worth of product. There's hundreds of kilos being busted.
So I'm wondering, like, who has the capacity in Toronto, or Toronto, as you say in Canada, What
Okay.
group?
So without saying names of the group, and you can leave it to your imagination or whatever, but bikers, right? Bikers are huge in Canada, especially on the coasts, which is where it's important, right? To be a significant number of people. They definitely have a lot of people on the coast. The Italians, definitely. There's a certain group, again, I can't say the name because I'm friends with a lot of these guys, and out of respect I can't say anything, or I don't want to, but a certain group from southern Italy, their faction in Canada, in Ontario, is now becoming one of the most important in the world. You could almost say it's the base of this group. So that lets you know how powerful it is in Canada. Yeah, and these guys,
Are these first generation people? Are these people from the other side, or is it like in New York? The family's Italian, but they've been here for 4 generations.
No, so this specific group, some of these guys have been around for 100 years, right? And we're talking about like Prohibition days. You know what I mean? Like they've been here that long. But you have to understand, I'd say the biggest difference between, and I'm just talking about Italians, with organized crime between Canadians and Americans, is Canadians are actually more traditional. They're actually more old school. And if you talk to a lot of guys overseas, like, in Italy, and even other parts of England and Germany and all these other places, the Canadian gangsters, the Canadian organized crime groups, Italians, whatever, they get a lot of respect. They do, because they're good at business. There's no flexing. They're good. They're very good in the shadows. And that's what any organized crime group should really strive to be. Certain can't, because where they're geographically located, they have to show face. They have to show violence. They have to, you know what I mean? We're talking about, south of the border. But when it comes to these other groups that are operating all over the world, the last thing you want to do is be known. You know what I mean? You want to be in the shadows. You don't want anyone to see you. So, and Canadian gangsters are really good at that. You know what I mean?
There's something about the modesty of Canadians that I think plays well to that.
100%.
Americans are very ego-driven. Crime is so celebrated in pop culture that I think a lot of gangsters and drug dealers like to be flashy, and they
100%.
want people to know them. So how do you fit into this? So you weren't really a criminal growing up.
Right.
Why?
I did some dirt, but yeah, nothing big.
Who were your parents, and what kind of family did you grow up in?
Okay, so the way that I grew up was my father was a criminal. He wasn't around much. After about 10 years old, I didn't see him for 16, 17 years. He was in and out of jail constantly. One of the things that's in the book is he started around 17 or 18 years old. You guys have Safeway out here in the US? Yeah, so back in the day, he robbed a Safeway, and this was before money trucks were going out every day, right? These guys would do it once a week or whatever. We're talking 45 years ago, right? So he ended up, when he was 18 or 19 years old, he hit up a Safeway, and he had 2 other friends with him, and they got away with about 60 grand, which is a lot of money back then, right? We're 45 years ago. And then he was always doing criminal stuff like that. Very hard worker though, very blue collar as well at the same time. Loved to dance, loved to sing, had an amazing voice, performed in Italian festivals and stuff like that out there. But his real downfall, in my opinion, was when he got into drugs, right? So he was always, his whole life, from what I'm told, was very anti-drugs until he was in his early 30s, and his cousin kind of introduced him to cocaine, and it led into heroin. And once he got into heroin, his life was over. So in the last 30 years, he was addicted to heroin, and he died a couple years ago during COVID. And I wasn't told how he died, but I imagine that it was an overdose or it was suicide, one or the other, right? My mom, complete opposite. My mom was just a hard worker. She raised us kids. It was me and 2 sisters living at home, 2 older sisters. And she was just a hard-working, good woman, kind of the glue of the family, kept everybody together. But I never had a good relationship with her, and that was on me. I was very angry, from the moment I was born, I don't know. But there was something inside of me that had this anger towards her and my sisters, and and beyond authority, and you know, I always had that
The cold.
yeah, whatever it is, yeah. But I'll fast forward a little bit here because there's so much to tell about my childhood. But you know, this is a true crime podcast at the end of the day.
So you're 26. Right? What changed?
I was working at a call center. I was making decent money at that time, like $20-something an hour, which I was happy with. You know what I mean? But I had this weird thing going on with this married woman there, and this woman was like a 10. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a woman that I should have something going on with, but I think that she just liked what I represented. She was very miserable in a relationship. I was this fun younger guy that was taking her out to hookah lounges and bringing her around rappers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So she was very intrigued by that, and it started super fun and just, you know, we're kidding and stuff like that. And then it just seemed like she took it a little too far, and she told me that she was going to leave her husband and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, what? You know, we weren't or anything like that. You know what I mean? Excuse me. I don't know if I can swear here, but
sure.
Okay. You know, it was starting to get uncomfortable for me. And then one day I went and talked to the supervisor, and I was like, listen, man, like, I need you to move me or her. Like, I don't care which one it is. You can move me or whatever. And he asked me why, and I told him. And he starts laughing, and I don't blame the guy because she, like I said, she was a 10. Like, if
Winnipeg 10.
Yeah, no. We'll say an LA 7 or an LA 8.
That's good. Okay. All right.
That's decent, right?
Merry Ballsmas from our friends over at Manscaped. The holidays are approaching, but what if I told you that the celebration started early this year? It turns out the perfect gift does exist, and who else to bring it down your chimney than the leaders in below-the-belt grooming. Keep calm and let your balls jingle this season with Manscaped's brand new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, featuring the new Lawnmower 5.0. Watch all your wishes and mistletoe kisses come true. Look nice when you're going naughty by going to manscaped.com and use code CONNECT, CONNECT, for 20% off plus free shipping. You guys, you know about the Lawnmower 5.0. I've plugged it on this show multiple times. This is the only way to trim your balls. You use any other razor, you will cut, nick. It's incredibly painful. You guys are all shaving with cheap electronic razors you buy at Target. It's going to come back and bite you on the balls, literally. Okay? Unwrap the gift of smoothness this season with Manscaped. When you get the Manscaped Performance Package, it's bundled. It's got all this cool stuff. Not only does it come with the lawnmower, but it comes with the Weed Whacker 2.0, the ear and nose trimmer, a bunch of liquid formulations, all of these cool free gifts inside, a brush. You know, they give you the whole thing when you go over and get that package. The gift of Manscaped doesn't stop there. This bundle comes with 2 free gifts: Manscaped's Boxers 2.0 premium underwear and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag. You guys, it's the holiday season. It's Christmas. It's Hanukkah. This is an easy, brainless gift that's amazing. It works for any male relative. Get it for your dad, your brother-in-law, your brother. I'm going to supply all of my male relatives with this, and it's appreciated. Everybody needs this. Go over right now. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CONNECT at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code CONNECT. Manscaped. Get your jingle balls ready for the holidays.
So I tell this guy, he laughs in my face, he thinks I'm joking or whatever, and I said, man, like, if you don't do this, then I gotta quit. And he's like, then go. And that was it. So after this, I decided, like, to take a break just from life, right? So I decided to be homeless, okay? And I'm not talking about on the streets. I'm not talking about, like, doing drugs and squeegee guy or whatever like that. But I decided to go to a shelter and take a couple months to myself where I just, like, recuperated from everything that I've been going through for several years, right? Which is discussed in the book. If you want to know more about the earlier years, read the book. There's the first half of the book really is about my life and how I grew up, and a lot of more in-depth and emotional stuff. But the other half of the book is the criminal aspect. So I spent a couple of months homeless, and to be honest, it was great for me. It's almost like my father was institutionalized from jail, right? So having a bed, having the 3 meals, having your workout regiment or whatever it was, like certain guys operated well like that. I never thought I would, because I was always kind of like a wild card, and I didn't like structures or systems or anything like that. But I somehow fell in love with it almost there, and it was a peaceful time in my life. It was the calm before the storm, right? Shortly after, I meet a guy who's an Italian guy from another part of Canada. I believe from Quebec, right? I believe he was Sicilian. And I also believe that he was hiding out, right? He was hiding out in my city. There had been a bust recently, a huge Canadian bust in Ontario and Quebec. And a bunch of guys were on the run. A bunch of guys got caught, like a couple hundred of them got caught. It was huge. And this guy, his story wasn't adding up when I saw him, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't stay at the place because I actually slept there, right? But he would come by a lot. You could tell the guy was a little bit lonely. He wasn't completely all there. And he was older, right? So the way that I met him was like, you know, I think I was wearing like, you know, like a soccer jersey one day, Italian jersey, and he asked me if I was Italian. I said yes. He starts talking to me in his language, which is Sicilian. My Italian's not very good. My Spanish is good now because I spent so much time in Latin America later on. But my Italian wasn't good, and the dialects in the south are completely different, right? Sicilian has Greek in it. It has some Arabic. I don't know what this guy's saying to me. So I said, listen, man, like, you know, I'm Italian, but I don't speak that much, and I definitely don't speak Sicilian. But we hit it off, and I just kind of helped this guy out, to be honest. I would, you know, go grab food for him. You know what I mean? I would, if he was cold, I'd go grab him a blanket. You know, he's like a grandpa. You know what I mean? And he had some interesting stories. I think he was nuts, but he had some very interesting stories just about how he grew up in Sicily and stuff like that. One day I noticed him eating, and he has dentures, right? And his teeth fall out, right? His top row of teeth fall out, and that's not that weird, you know, whatever. Old guys have dentures. But then I noticed he was eating as well, right? He was eating at the same time, and I noticed his fingertips, right? They were like gone. So what I mean by that is, like, if you can picture someone dipping your fingers in acid, right? And it almost going down to the bone, right? That's what his fingers looked like. So you couldn't really see, you know, you look at your finger right now and you see the patterns, right, of your fingerprints, and he didn't have that, right? So I thought that was really strange. And keep in mind, this guy was always telling me stories that didn't add up. But when I saw this, I saw dentures and I saw the fingerprints thing. The first thing that I thought was, remember, I also thought this guy was on the lam, right? And, you know, there's a lot of guys that will go to extreme measures when they're on the lam, right? Plastic surgery, getting rid of their fingerprints and their teeth to be identified, right? I don't know if it works so much in Canada, but if you're from, you know, a farm from back home or whatever, that will work great. You know, if you don't have if they don't have your dental records,
wow,
or your fingerprints, right? So that confirmed to me that this guy, you know, he's a little shady. Like, you know, I already kind of knew that, but to be honest, like, I'd seen so much in my life, and I was so comfortable in the dark, we'll say, in the underworld, in the shadows, whatever it was, that it didn't bother me at all. I was just kind of like more intrigued. I was like, okay, now who the is this guy, you know? And then shortly after, like I said, this is going on for a couple of months. Shortly after, I'm walking back to the mission, right, where I was staying, and I see him, and he comes up to me. He says, "I'm leaving. I'm going home." And I said, "Well, where the is that?" You know? He's like, "You know, out east." He said, "Out east," and I already knew. I'm pretty sure he's from Quebec. You know, to this day, he never told me, but he said, "You know, I want to thank you for everything. You've been a great friend to me. You've been my only friend here. You're the only person that's kind of looked out for me. I didn't know anyone here." And he never really, again, explained to me what he was doing there, but he was just really appreciative that someone on a real level too, like, you know, not on some G code or something like that, but it was just, you know, a young guy looked after him. You know what I mean? It made him feel like, you know, more comfortable there. And he basically said to me, like, you know, I'm going to have some work for you in the future. I think that you're going to, you know, that you're a capable guy, and I trust you, and you seem loyal, and you did all these things for me when you didn't have to. You don't know who I am, or, you know, and he even told me, he's like, "I know you're a smart guy. I know you knew that I was lying to you half the time, but it's because I had to." I can't trust anybody. And that kind of let me know, okay, yeah. So he told me that someone was going to reach out to me. I handed him, I didn't hand him, but I wrote down my email, my phone number, and he said someone's going to reach out to you in the next couple of months, and I have a business opportunity for you. It's up to you whether or not you choose to go with it. But he said you can make a lot of money, you can earn a lot of money. Bro, I'm homeless. Like, I don't have a job at this point. So somebody tells me I can make a lot of money, obviously I'm going to go for it. So shortly after I got out of the the mission, and I moved into an apartment with a friend at the time, and I was at a friend's bar, hookah lounge, and I got a phone call from a French-Italian guy. So it just confirmed to me even more, that this guy was from Quebec. And he basically said he's a friend of the old man, and he knows it's my birthday, or that my birthday was coming up or whatever. He had a gift for me. I was like, a gift? He's like, I'm going to be at Winnipeg Airport in a couple hours, right? A 3-hour flight or 2.5-hour flight, whatever it was. But I want you to meet me here. I didn't meet him at the airport. I met him somewhere else. He obviously knew my city, though. From this, like I said, he was an outsider. He sounded like he was from Quebec. But he knew, go over to this place by this place. And I'm like, how does this guy know where these things are? So I go and meet the guy, and he just basically says to me what the old man said, but he repeats it through himself. And he said, when the old man was here, like you're the only person that he considered a friend. He had a lot of enemies. He couldn't let people know who he was or where he was or anything like that. And you didn't seem to care, He'll never forget, the times that you brought him his food, or that, his teeth would fall out and you wouldn't laugh at him. You'd help him. I'd pick up his teeth and I'd go clean him, give it back to him. You know what I mean? He really respected that. And for me, it was just, I'm an empath. I'm natural. I want to help people. You know what I mean? I've always felt like a leader, but in a way that, not like a dominant, violent leader, but like just taking care of the people around me, right? So he goes on to tell me, he's like, he said that you might be interested in making some money. So, I have 2 envelopes for you. So he hands me 1 envelope. He's like, that's your gift. Happy birthday. Thanks for everything you did for the old man. He appreciates it. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. I remember he kept saying we a lot. We appreciate it. So let me know that there's a group involved. And then he hands me another envelope, and he's like, take a look inside after I leave and make your decision. There's a number at the bottom of this piece of paper, and if you're interested, you can call me. So I open this first, the gift, right? After I walk away and get into a taxi. How much was it? It was about I can't remember exactly, and I'm always bouncing back. I want to say it was like $3,800, right?
Okay.
And keep in mind, I'm broke at the time.
Yeah.
So $3,800 is like, that's paying my rent for a month or two, and like, putting some food in the fridge. I'm really happy. And then in the other envelope was a list of names, phone numbers, addresses, and amounts in dollars, right? So I kind of gathered, I had to call the guy after a couple of days after I thought about it, but these were debts. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
what kind of debts were they? What amounts? Do you remember?
Yeah. So I remember the first couple. It's almost like he did it in order, which I really like, because I like people that are like anal like that. Put in order alphabetically and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why I'm like that, but I like organized. So you start at the top, and there was like $850. Like there's nothing, $3,000, whatever. I think the final amount, because there was about 10 different names and numbers on there, and I think the last amount was around $15K or whatever, right? And all it said was like, if you're interested, like contact me back, right? So eventually I call the guy from a payphone, and I say, is this what I think it is? Like, you want me to go collect this money? And he's like, yeah. He's like, can you handle that? I was like, yeah, no problem.
And where were these people located?
In my city.
Okay.
Okay, so there was 2. There was one in Ontario, and there was one in Quebec as well, in Montreal. Or no, sorry, Laval in Quebec, right, which is outside of Montreal. But and that was the bigger amount, actually. I should say that. So all of them went well, to be honest. Like I collected in Winnipeg first because I had never gone to these other provinces, and I didn't really know a lot of people there. I had some family, but not like connected guys or anything, just family members that would tell me like what to do in the city or whatever. So everything went smoothly, and
how did you have any resistance? Like how'd you go about collecting money?
Okay, so this is explained in the book, but I really want to make it clear, like, I wasn't a tough guy. You know what I mean? Like, I could be, right? Like, a lot of people know me as a tough guy in the sense that I can be hard to deal with. I got a bit of an anger problem sometimes. Like, if you piss me off, I'll explode. That kind of shit. But I was not like a violent guy. So I was the guy that they sent before they sent the other guy, right? So, like, when it's not that serious, I go in there and I was like, you know, if you owe $3-5 grand, whatever it is, say, listen, man, just put something on it. You know what I mean? If you can't pay the full amount, just pay something. If you owe $3 to $5 grand, you know, pay $500, pay $1,000. Give me something so that I can go to this guy and say he's trying, you know, so you don't get your ass kicked. You know what I mean? And then there was obviously someone bigger. And
did you know why they owed money?
Yeah, so it ranged, bro. So it ranged from everything from gambling,
Sure.
like horse races and stuff like that, which is something in Winnipeg. You know, I never thought that existed in Winnipeg, but I found out earlier on that it was.
Yeah, we've learned actually just through the course of this show. I mean, honestly, wherever there's blue collar money, you have a lot of gambling going on, a lot of horse racing,
a lot of fixed stuff.
Yeah, that. Oh wow, yes, of course.
I saw your guest the other day, and I know a guy that was doing that.
And of course, wherever you have Italians, you have, you know, organized crime. You have rackets like this, and gambling and sports gambling specifically. I mean, is one of the most prevalent, huge. Rackets amongst in
That's
organized
why I don't
crime.
watch sports, man. Yeah, I love soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. But I can't even enjoy it because I just always think like this is probably fixed, man. You know, because and some of it goes on such a high level, like, you know what I mean. You've heard a lot of stories, I'm sure, even NBA and NFL.
I
and
doubt
like
that's
that.
happening anymore. If it happens, it's probably with, you know, ultra rich Middle Eastern, Saudi, Qataris,
Right,
you
the
know,
oil
that buy
money,
their
eh?
whole teams. Yeah, I don't think
And they are doing that though.
Yeah,
you look at
probably.
like Premier League in England, they're buying entire football clubs right now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're collecting this money.
Yeah.
How much were you able to get? 80% of it? 70% of it? Did you get all of it?
All of it.
Wow.
Yeah, the first run, I got all of it. And he wasn't expecting that. He was just saying work it. But I'd say within 2.5 weeks, I got everything. And it totaled up to, I'd say, probably around 30 grand, right? Which he was very happy with. And keep in mind, like, this guy was sending me to do this, not just on his behalf, but on other people's behalf. Because you know how it is, like, with bookies and stuff like that, like, they'll hire someone externally, right? So for instance, let's say if I went to these guys and it was a larger amount, let's say, like, because it did get much larger later down the road, which I'll talk about, but let's say it was like 50 grand, right? And I went in there and I was like, listen, man, you got to kick up 5 or 10 right now. And the guy's like, you go yourself, you know. Then we would send in someone else, and it was typically biker type guys. If it wasn't bikers at all, because the truth is, from my experience, and this is just my experience, Italians will kill you. You know what I mean? Like they really will. And bikers, they're tough as, they're big guys, they're intimidating. They know how to smash people's heads in, but they can also like control themselves a little bit, which might sound nuts to you, but I know a lot of Italian guys that when they fly off the handle, they can't stop. It can't just be a beating. Do you know what I mean? So they purposely, like, you don't, if this guy's making you, even if he's been and he doesn't want to pay, you know, you look at the long run, how much you're making off this guy for years, right? Even if he's being a little, you still want to have him in your.
Yeah, he's a long-term customer.
He's a long-term customer.
Yeah, murder is not so easily done, especially when you just have like an addicted gambler. Like at the end of the day, you look at what he's paid. It's like, well, he's paid me $500,000. So what if he's late this time? But it sounds like the Italians are, you know, they've risen to like a white-collar level now. They're running gambling rackets, and they use the bikers for the dirty work. They're the brutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been like that for a while. If you look, the most interesting politics, like gangster politics that exists in Canada, that's ever existed in Canada, is in Quebec.
Yeah.
So if you ever watch Bad Blood, like about the Rizzutos and stuff like that, that's all facts, man. So like you know, you had Irish, Haitians, French, and Italians and bikers all working together, and it was under this system, and unfortunately that system has failed, right? Like Vito Rizzuto died, and he was really our godfather in Canada. It doesn't matter if you were Calabrian or Sicilian or a biker or whoever. That guy is Canada's biggest gangster ever. I don't care what anybody says. That's just a fact. The guy in politics, like gangster politics that exists in Canada, that's ever existed in Canada, is in Quebec.
Yeah.
So if you ever watch Bad Blood, like about the Rizzutos and stuff like that, that's all facts, man. So like you had Irish, Haitians, French, and Italians and bikers all working together, and it was under this system, and unfortunately that system has failed, right? Like Vito Rizzuto died, and he was really our godfather in Canada. It doesn't matter if you were Calabrian or Sicilian or a biker or whoever. That guy is Canada's biggest gangster ever. I don't care what anybody says. That's just a fact. The guy had stupid money, stupid power, and
He's like our John Gotti, something like that.
Exactly. He was, and he kind of was like that. You know, he I don't want to say anything else other than
When
that.
what are the laws around organized crime? Like, so I know the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That's your FBI.
Basically, yeah.
What
Our
like
intelligence.
what are do they have big RICO laws, like big organized crime racketeering laws in Canada the way they do in the US to take down the mafia?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why it's probably so prevalent still.
Yeah. That's not to say that they don't exist at all, right? Like that there's definitely, it's not RICO, it's not called RICO or anything like that. I don't know what it's called, and I'm just going to be honest here, but you don't see that typically. You don't see that in Canada. Like the person that is caught doing what they're doing wrong is the person that's charged, right? They don't even like to say like with the news report I told you the other day, the biggest bust that we had in Ontario, there was $90 million worth of product. They don't say any names. They don't say any organized, crime groups or anything like that. Even though it was obvious, like it was, to me, it was obvious.
Well, it's because they're so PC in Canada too. They don't want to say there's a bunch of Italians. There's a bunch of So okay, wow, that stands to reason then that there's still a lot of entrenched, like old school organized crime.
Definitely.
So fast forward us now. So you do a good job.
Yeah.
What comes next?
Okay, so the deck collections I did for about a year and a half.
And how much are you keeping? How much do you get to make?
10%, typically. Yeah, which I was happy with, bro. Because the first month, I'd say the first month that I did it, I probably made $8K, right? 8,500. Yeah. And man, like I just come from being homeless and broke and poor, so $8,500 is a lot of money. Yeah. And I knew that it was only going to get bigger. The amounts were going to get bigger. The trust in me was going to get bigger. So you know what I mean? I ended up, over that year and a half, I'd say I probably did at the end of it like around 150 to 160K, right?
Wow. In collections.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously I didn't save all of it. You never save all of it. I didn't save. I'm notorious for that. But I saved tens of thousands of dollars, and I eventually walked away. I walked away from it for two reasons. So I was told that it was a good idea for me to start carrying a pistol, right? Carrying heat, which I never did. I never did for a year and a half, and I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't like it because I didn't want to have to use it. Point blank period. I was making good money, but I'm not gonna kill someone over like 10 grand, 20 grand. That's just stupid. I'm not gonna go to jail for 10, 20, 30 lifetime, whatever the fuck it was, even though it's less in Canada, right? More lenient. How
common is it for Canadian criminals to have guns? Because there really are no Second Amendment rights there. I know every Canadian has a rifle because they love hunting, but handguns, illegal handguns.
It's terrible in the streets, bro.
Really? So everybody's packing?
Yeah, so like a lot of the guys, we were talking about the Aboriginal groups, right?
Yeah.
The African gangs, a lot of Arabs coming over, like the Syrians that came in, the refugees, Afghanis, Iraqis, and stuff like that. They're pretty big out there. They are some wild, and they're heavy loaded.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't give a to use it, to be honest. Wow. And that's, again, it's kind of what I don't like about Winnipeg, because whenever you, and you know this, bro, whenever you go to a place that is controlled by a certain organization or group, petty crime and little like that it doesn't exist, right? Because they run their city, their country, their province, their state, whatever you want to call it, like a business. So when someone gets robbed, a tourist gets robbed or whatever, that's bad for business. Now you got cops, now you got heat, now you got media attention. The problem with my city is that there's no one in full control. There's definitely strong players, and a lot of these guys communicate with each other and stuff like that. But the kids, you know, and I call them kids, even though I'm 35, I'm still young for you know, for a lot of those guys, the old timers. But I'm talking like 20-year-olds, like 25-year-olds, and even younger. They're just wild, man.
So it's become like a street gang situation, like any American city, Chicago.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's changing.
Yeah.
And I also told you how, you know, it's starting to look like we're having external forces coming in too. So it's not a good combination going on right now.
Right. I'm sure the bikers, the Hells Angels, they're notorious for running guns.
Yep.
I'm sure that's big business
And
up
they're
there.
huge in Canada, bro. You got to keep in mind, like Vancouver, probably one of the most important places for that group in the world. You know, it's just they're heavy out there.
Yeah. So, but now here you are. You're not a gangster. You're just a guy that's, you know.
So you saw an opportunity.
Yeah, totally. So what? So did you get a pistol? How did it result?
So I told you there's two things that were going on that made me decide to back away. So one was the pistol, and then I also had a friend that was involved in organized crime in Winnipeg, and he kind of let me know that these guys are, you know, they're impressed with you, they like what you're doing and stuff like that. And it almost sounded like that it was going another route. They were going to start asking me to do other things.
Maybe you were going to become the guy that put his hands on people or killed people, or
it felt like it was going away from the debt collections. I was fine with the debt collections, but it sounded like it was drugs, and it sounded, which I didn't like, and it also sounded like it was, you know, putting in work. You know what I mean? On people, right? So I got out of there while I still had the chance, and I almost immediately left the country for the first time ever in my life. It was probably 2015 or 2016 was the first time I actually left Canada, and then
you didn't tell them, obviously, right?
No, I did. I told them, you know, like, you know, I've been doing this for like a year and a half. You know, I'm a young guy. I want to start traveling a little bit. I want to start seeing places. You know, I was super respectful about it, and because they hadn't made the offer yet, I couldn't refuse. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like they, you know, it might have been a different case if they asked me.
Right.
But I just heard they were about to, so I got the out of there and I started traveling, and that's how I got into other crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you tell us where you traveled to, who was that old man? What do you mean? With what position was he? The old man that you took care of with his fingernails or his fingerprints all.
He was a capo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the Montreal.
One of
the Montreal.
One of them. There's a lot.
Italian crime families.
There's a couple that are talked about constantly, but there's actually a lot, man.
And he was on the run from because there was a war going on, or it was from the law?
Feds.
Okay,
Feds.
gotcha.
Yeah, but there was also a war too.
Okay.
So there's constantly a war between the Calabrians in Ontario and the Sicilians in Quebec because the Calabrians want the port.
Right.
Everybody wants the port. Yeah.
Wow. And so they're going to war over the port
Constantly.
like they do in
It's
the
still
old
happening
country.
right now. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And the guy had his fingerprints sawed off, or
I don't know what it was. It
dude.
looked like acid. Like that's the only guess I have for it. But yeah, it was almost like just bone.
That's wild. So where did you go when you left Canada?
Okay, so I have to retract just a little bit. When I was still homeless, I was sitting there at a hookah lounge. I was talking to my brother, and he was telling me he was about to go to Mexico. He just, you know, he loved it out there, and he thought he found a woman or whatever. So, you know, he's gonna go try his thing out there. And now, intuition's always been a big thing for me. Dreaming has always been a big thing. I've always visualized things that would happen in my life that actually did, and it could be 2 years later, 5 years, 10 years later, whatever. If you believe in law of attraction, which I do, I created a lot of images inside my head of what my life was gonna look like, and it was absurd to people when I spoke about it. So for my brother, for instance, I'm sitting there, I'm homeless at the time, I've got one of those big camper backpacks on my back, and I'm telling him, like, you know, I don't know how, but by the end of this year, I'm gonna make $100,000, right? And He's like, what are you talking about? I had no scams going on. I had no money. I had no job, nothing like that. By the end of the year, I didn't make that kind of money, but I think I made around 30K or whatever. The following year, I did 200, right? So I go to meet my brother. The first place I traveled to answer the question bluntly, is Mexico to see my brother.
Where in Mexico?
Cancun, but real Cancun, not the hotel zone, but like, you know, the real spot. And I took him out and showed him around and stuff. Unfortunately, that trip, I will also say, me and him got in a little bit of a fight. He's not like me. He didn't grow up tough. You know what I mean? He grew up spoiled, you know, and that comes through our relationship. It used to, not now, but it used to come through. He had an attitude, you know what I mean? There's a lot of times that I had to fight people for him because he had a big mouth. He's a year or two younger than me. But you know, we were in Playa del Carmen, and we were walking around, and he said something really, you know, just stupid. I forget what it was. It was not that big of a deal at the time, but it was disrespectful. So I slapped him in the back of the head, you know, like I didn't punch him or anything, but I gave him a slap. I was like, man, you gotta shut the up. Like, you're in Mexico now. You can't be talking to people like that, whether it's me or anybody else. Like, you gotta understand, like, this is a dangerous place that you're in, and I don't want you mouthing off to the wrong guy and getting your head cut off and you being stuffed in a trunk. You know what I mean? Because I was very well aware of the culture that, you know, surrounds these tourist destinations in Mexico. So, and unfortunately on that trip, two things happened. So I get in a fight with my brother. Don't talk to him for 5 years after that because he was so cheesed about it. But I got robbed for the only time in my life I've ever been robbed was in Mexico. It was on that first trip. And it was beautiful, I gotta say. I you know, it sounds ridiculous, but I really respected how they did it. You know what I mean? Even afterwards, I was obviously pissed and a little bit freaked out.
Robbed by a hooker. We've all been there, dude.
No, that comes later on. John. That's a different part of the world. But so basically, what happened is we're taking a bus from the hotel zone to real Cancun, where he lives, and we get off at this bus stop. And somebody gets off the bus that's wearing one of those tourist guide shirts. The guys that all run around Cancun, you know, like all the clubs and stuff like that. So I notice it, but I don't think anything of it at the same time, right? So this kid gets off. He's probably a couple years younger than me. Maybe he's like 23, 24. He gets off at the same stop as us. Now, we have 3 blocks to walk to get home to his place, my brother's place. But this kid goes right away. He goes like, we're walking down a straight street, you know, and he takes one of the side streets. So I think nothing of it. So we're 2 blocks away, you know, and then I had a chain on at the time, and I just feel the pull, right? And you know, it rips, and it was like $1,000 chain, gold plated. It wasn't anything, serious. But when I turned around, the kid that had gotten off the bus with me is the one that grabbed the chain. And maybe 5-10 feet away from him, there's another kid about the same age, 24 years old, 23 years old, or whatever it is, on a scooter pointing a pistol at me, right? So anyways, I got my revenge though, which is a good part of the story. I ended up paying some guy to you know, rough the guy up and just kind of let him know. And that wasn't so much for me, that was for my brother, because I didn't want him looking weak in that neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's so strange why you would act that way in Mexico. Like you're acting like you're on the streets in Winnipeg. It's like you don't live there.
But it's my brother, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't like, listen, man, like when, so, you know, the guy's there, he's holding the pistol to me, he's shouting in Spanish. My Spanish is non-existent at that time. I don't know what he's saying. So I put my hands up, I let him take the chain. The pendant fell off of the chain. I grabbed that after they had left. But this kid up. So what he did was, a couple days later, he sold my chain for some weed. And the guy that he sold it to was a barber in the same barber shop that my brother goes to get his haircut and stuff like that. So there's this guy, and I think he was like part of the well-known El Salvadorian gang. You know what I'm talking about? Tattoos all over
just
the face.
Just say the name, dude.
Like
MS-13. Nobody's coming for you.
Hey, but it could be another one. Could be another one.
No, that's the only one. Who gives a goddamn?
Okay. So that's what he looked like.
You don't come down to be on the connect to be coy.
Right.
So what were you doing down there? You got your chain back. You got revenge. That's all petty.
Yeah.
What are you doing in Mexico? What do you start doing to make money? You brought $5,000 down there.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Well, I left shortly after, bro.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the thing that happened with my brother, right?
Right.
So I spent the rest of the year traveling. I went to I went to New York for the first time, went to Puerto Rico, went to Chile, and I was just chilling.
Living.
I wasn't living. Yeah, I wasn't doing anything. When I got into my next racket, if you want to call it that, was probably the following year. So I started going to Italy. The first time I went was I think it was January of 2016 or January of 2017. I'm not completely sure. I think it's 2017. Anyways, I go to Italy for the first time. I spent about a month out there, and while I'm there, I was referred to somebody in Milan, right? And this was just like, this is a good guy, go check him out. And the other guy was told the same thing about me, right? And it's kind of like, when you meet someone else that's shady because you met him through a certain guy, right? So for me, like, I already knew that the guy that I was meeting was into some, and he's a Calabrian guy, and there's a lot of them in Milan. Milan is a focal point right now.
Interesting. Tell us about that really quick. How is Milan related to the larger criminal networks in Italy?
Oh, Milan is like it's like, how can you say?
Because Milan is northern Italy. It's very European. It's completely different from the south.
With the money, bro.
Yeah, there's so much money.
So much money.
So
yeah.
What are Calabrians and the people from Naples, the Camorra? What are they doing up in Milan?
So everything that you can imagine, from extortion to legitimate businesses.
Right.
You got to keep in mind, like all the Italian criminal organizations for the last, I'd say, 20 something years have been trying to legitimize themselves. That doesn't mean that they're not involved in other stuff, but they're constantly trying to take that dirty money and put it into clean money. That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you talk about money laundering and stuff, you want to have legitimate assets and stuff like that can't be taken away from you, right? So for me, I met this guy. We became pretty close. I saw him, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 times, but we'd spend like 6 hours together. And he starts talking to me about Panama, right? And I don't know a thing about Panama. Up until then, I had only visited Chile, Puerto Rico, Mexico, not on a criminal vibe at all, just going there for a vacation. Now I start hearing about money laundering. I hear about like this stuff that they're setting up with real estate companies, and how they have people inside of the banks, and if I want to get a deposit box, they could do something for me and stuff like that. And then I eventually, that same year, not the same trip, because I go to Italy about 5 times that year. I went back to Europe 5 times. On top of going to Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, I was all over that year. And that was a year where I made a lot of money too. I had a couple of other scams going on.
What were you doing?
One of them I can't talk about. I can't. It's too close to home. I'll just say it like that. Like if the feds are gonna get me, I want it to be a little bit difficult at least.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna talk about certain things. But one of the things that I was doing was selling banking information, right? So we would get we had a guy that had that would get, it's almost like what the dark web is. You know how you can get credit cards and profile information.
Yeah.
We had someone in a bank that would actually get us everything, and it was a for sure thing. So I could get a list of maybe 1,000 names with all the personal banking information, and I would pay roughly like, I don't know, maybe $3 to $5 grand for this. You know what I mean?
For 1,000 people's names.
Yeah.
Where is this located? You could do
this
that.
Is in Canada. So this was one of my rackets that I had in Canada, and the guy was so rich. Like the guy that gave me that connect, right? Because it was somebody else that brought me in. He's like, you're a good guy. If you want to make a couple extra grand, do this. He introduced me to some Albanians and some Nigerians in England, in London. And these guys are the masters at, for as far as I know, for running credit cards and stuff like that.
Right, of course. They're notorious for that.
Yeah.
So explain how it works. You buy this list with all this banking
USB
info.
stick.
Okay, right. It's all on a hard drive.
Yeah.
You buy it from like a teller or the bank manager?
Yeah, a teller.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you buy it from a teller. Who do you sell it to, and how much do you sell it for?
So again, I was walked into this, so that means that there was already sellers. This guy, the guy that brought me in, Chinese guy, this was too little for him. This guy was huge. He was making, like, I'm guessing, I don't know, $3-4 million a year. So what I was making off of, so remember, I'm paying $3 to $5 grand for these USB sticks, right? But I'm going over to London or other parts of England, Cardiff, Wales, spent a lot of time out there as well, and I'm selling this stick for like 10 to 12,000 pounds, right? Yeah. Which is giving me about 18,000 Canadian.
So, and you're selling it to like the Nigerians and or whoever's grabbing.
It was usually like I would only do it once or twice a year, to be honest. It was just like a little extra money while I'm in England. I can pop this off, you know what I mean? And for me, it was always Albanians and Nigerians.
Yeah,
that was it. I don't think I ever sold to like an Englishman or an Irishman or anything like that. It was always those guys because they were so good. They're so good at what they do. You know, they had the machines to make the credit cards and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they showed me their operation one time. It was nuts, bro. I walked into this place that was no bigger than this, what we're in right now, but there was like 20 dudes making cards. You know what I mean? They had like 10 different machines, and God only knows how much those guys were making off of what they spent 15 grand on me for.
It's way better than drugs.
Oh, way better.
Way better than drugs.
Well, and here's, okay.
Gotta get your money out of Canadian banks, folks.
Right? Wow. That's why I stayed away from drugs, bro. So I had a personal issue with drugs, right? A lot of my family was affected by it. A lot of my friends were affected by it. I saw the ugliness in it. Didn't like it. Wasn't for me. But on the other side of things, I also saw the risk and the reward. And I said, I got these guys that I know that are doing white collar crimes, and they're making millions. You know what I mean? And I know a couple of guys that even got caught. These guys got like 3 to 6 months. Right. Some of them didn't even do time.
Right. What's the other big scam? So identity theft is gigantic. Mm-hmm. What is that? The scam of scams, or is there like another kind of fraud? Yeah, and in general.
No, money laundering. So that's when I get into Panama.
Gotcha.
So keep in mind, I have a couple of these things going on. I'm still collecting debt every once in a while. Like if there's somebody like, you know, oh, I got a guy in Winnipeg, because I'm always in Winnipeg. If I couldn't do it myself, I get someone else to go do it, right? So
and how would you get work? Would you go into a town and say, hey, I need money, and would you call up an organization in Montreal and be like, say like, hey, I'm going to be in Winnipeg. If you have anything for me. No. Like, how would you garner this work?
Like, the debt collections was because I had my guys that I worked with for a year and a half or 2 years, and they said, you know, if you can do this or whatever. But I wasn't doing that much. So I got into the cards, and then keep in mind, about a year or so back when I'm in Italy, I get introduced to this idea of Panama, but I also get introduced to a man from Panama, right? And this guy is who I end up becoming very close with, and it helps me make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Is he a Panamanian guy, or is he a Calabrian in Panama?
No, he is. He's Lebanese. Yeah, but he's been in Panama forever, as far as I know. They're very strong in Latin America. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have no idea.
No?
I have no idea
really?
About that. Yeah.
Lebanese are very good at money laundering. I'm going to say that right now. And I'm not just saying in Latin America, but a lot of places that I went to in the world, Lebanese were there, bro. And they were doing, you know, some serious stuff. So how I get into it, I go down there. The first thing I get is this deposit box. So there's a woman that that runs a bank, not runs it, but she's like whatever, she's an assistant or manager or whatever, and she'll get me a deposit box. And the beauty of this thing is that I don't have to go in there with a passport. I don't have to go there with anything else. I just have this box, and every once in a while I put, you know, 3 grand in it, 5 grand in it, or I take out. And the crazier part of this story is
hang on. So you're taking money from your contacts in Italy, flying it over to Panama and putting it in this box?
Sometimes, but more so, remember the guy that I had met from Panama, right?
Okay.
So he got me some work in Panama as well. And it ranged everything from helping people get through the Darien Gap.
Yeah, Darien Gap.
Darien Gap, sorry. I had a couple things going on out there as well.
But tell us about the money laundering. Whose
Yeah.
cash are you putting in that safe deposit box?
My own.
Okay.
My own cash.
Gotcha.
So this was like my safety net.
Right.
Yeah, because I didn't trust banks. You know, because I literally had a friend that like gave me lists of client information for a bank. So I'm like, like, never mind just the fact that my money's dirty and I don't want it being under scrutiny. At the same time, I don't trust banks to be capable of actually keeping my money safe.
So tell us about Panamanian banks really quick though.
Yeah.
Are all the banks like that? Can you just walk in and get a safe deposit box without an ID, or you gotta fleece somebody? You gotta pay somebody.
It's tough.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, from what I know, right? And I didn't get this by myself on my own.
Okay.
You know, I'm not gonna act like I walked in there and did this myself. Somebody hooked it up. And like I said, I just use it as a box to put some savings in. I was in Panama a lot, I'd say 3-4 times a year, and I would typically. Only one time in 4 years I took money out, right? It was one time one of my accounts got frozen, and I had no money, and I had to get some money out of the safety deposit box. But other than that, every time I went to Panama, I was usually putting in $5 to $8 grand, and that was usually cash.
Yeah.
Right. So I had, I have a lot of contacts, obviously, in Winnipeg, in Canada, where I could take, $8 grand on the plane, bro. You know what I mean? 10 grand's the limit. So I would just go there and dump $8 grand, and that's it.
So that was your bank. You would do your dirt around the world, whatever you were doing, and then you would come put the profits in your Panamanian bank. Great.
But that's just the savings.
Yeah.
So I had access to other accounts too. I had one in Cardiff, I had one in Italy, I had one in Panama, and then I had another one in Canada. So I was gonna say where it was, but I don't want to snitch on myself here. And we were using a business in Canada, right? We're washing a lot of money through there as well. That's where I got the majority of my money as well. Was from this company that we were embezzling quite a bit of money out of. I'd say, I can't say for the other groups that were involved, but I was getting around 200 grand from this place every year.
I assume it was a cash business, or no?
Yeah, it was supplies.
Interesting.
Yeah, like let's say like automotive supplies.
So you had somebody on the inside that was stealing
CFO.
from the okay.
CFO.
Wow, a CFO.
Yeah.
Okay, and your job was to then hide or wash the embezzled money.
Yeah, well, for me, I was introduced to this person to put the brakes on them and basically say, like, we know what's going on with this place. We know that people are using it for this and that. We know what the owners are involved with, and extortion. And we wanted our piece out of it, right?
Wow.
So my piece ended up being a big piece, and I bought that piece. That's an important thing to talk about. I actually paid for the information to get to the CFO, right? So that's back in I'd say I want to say that's like 2018, 2019, where I get involved in that. So keep in mind, some of the rackets were really small. I'm talking about those USB sticks. That's only bringing me like 30 grand a year, right? But I had all this other stuff going on as well. I'd say I was probably running 3 or 4 different rackets a year, and that was where I went from making, I told you that first year I made like 30 grand or whatever it was, and then I did 200 the next year, and then I did 400 the next year, and then I would say from 2018 or 19 up until 2022, which is last year when I walked away from everything, I was doing at least $400,000 a year.
Wow, just between all of your rackets.
Yeah.
So you're an international criminal.
I was, yeah.
Wow. So you're like an independent guy. You're connected to organized crime, but you're essentially just a freelancer.
The best place to be.
Wow, totally.
Yeah, because I had backup, I had connects, I had whatever. I was treated with a lot of respect. I had a nickname in Italy with a Calabrian group, and it was Il Lupo Solitario, which is like the lone wolf.
Ah,
you know
I was
going
to guess Gordo.
No, that's Spanish, man. Come on. Yeah, I know my.
And you're stashing money in banks around the world, but mostly Panama, cash.
Yeah, for the savings that I don't touch.
Yeah.
Was in Panama.
You gotta have that nest egg.
And it wasn't a lot.
Gotta have that nest egg.
Yeah,
you gotta have that
you
couple
did.
100,000. We call it get out of town cash, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my if it hits the fan in Canada, I take a flight to Panama, I go grab this money, I can disappear. Right? And I was never worried about that. Like, keep in mind, like I said, it was white collar crime. It was big.
Tell us about some of these other hustles. First of all, tell us about how you were helping smuggle migrants through the Darien Gap.
So one of the trips that I went on, we can't talk about all the countries that I went to. I did 33 countries in 6 years, but in I want to get this right. So 2019, I think, I was in Ecuador, right? And I fell in love with it, man. It was right in the heat of COVID, and nowhere else was open. So I was like, I'm going to Ecuador. I need to go back to Latin America, and this is the only country I can get into. I'm going. So I went there, and nothing was really going on for me at that point. I had a lot of money put aside and stuff like that, but nothing was really going on. And I ended up becoming friends with a lot of Venezuelans out there. And these guys wanted to get into Panama. So I don't know if you know this, but Panama is a hub for a lot of different reasons.
I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah. So drug hub, flight hub,
money laundering hub.
Yeah. And even like legitimately, like, the Latinos that want to move to other countries and make money, Panama's great. It's the US dollar, and let's say they're making 200 back home a month. They can go to Panama, make 500, 600, 800, 1,000, which is like unheard of.
How doing what?
Legitimate jobs.
Just labor.
Oh yeah, just labor. Yeah, you can.
That's
like
how much
right
money.
now, I know a girl from Honduras that lives in Panama, and she runs a call center for these New Yorkers that basically like left her the company to manage, and most of the employees are making at least 750 USD a month, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, for someone from Honduras.
Yeah,
that's a whole year's
She's
worth.
making even more, right? Because she's supervising the thing.
Yeah,
so she's probably making like 1,500 or something like that, which is a lot of money. So yeah, Panama was such a an important place. So, anyways, I become friends with these Venezuelans and some Ecuadorians as well, some people out there, and they begin to tell me like, we want to get to Panama. You know what I mean? Like,
so these are migrants. These are people that fled Venezuela.
Yeah, they started telling me like, do you know anyone like out in Panama? I was like, yeah, I've been going there the last couple of years, and I didn't talk about what I was doing, but one guy, my barber actually, I got really close with him, and I started telling him certain things, and he wanted to get the out of Ecuador, and he had a lot of friends that were willing to pay, and they were willing to pay good money, and the cartel guys were taking less. Right, because it's obviously the cartel moving them through, the Colombians. But they, I can't say for everybody, but for like most of these guys, they were paying around 1,500 to $2,000 each person.
Just to get to Panama?
Yeah.
Huh.
But like if you really think about it, like for the, it's a dangerous route to take through the
how
gap
do you
in
get
the military.
How do you get from what city in Ecuador were you in?
I was in Quito. And then I spent some time like on the coast. I was in Guayaquil.
So how do you get from Quito or Guayaquil to Panama?
To be honest, bro, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't walk the guys there.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just kind of found them the contacts. But you got to keep in mind these guys walked from Venezuela to Ecuador.
Walked.
Oh yeah. They all
across
walked.
a continent.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Well, no, you're. If you think about it geographically, maybe you don't know this, bro. They're right next to each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I always
at
assume
the top-
Colombia, they have to go through Colombia, but you're right. Southern Venezuela.
Exactly.
I mean, still,
It's
it's
a
not a
long
walk down the
but,
street.
you know Venezuela, right? So it's like a lot of people are desperate to get out of there. But yeah, so we'll fast forward through all this stuff. I'll talk about my time in Colombia.
Sure. So
Right, that
real
was-
quick though, you would connect them with
cartel guys.
in Ecuador.
Yeah.
That would smuggle them through Colombia probably.
Guys in Panama.
Yeah.
That would come out to Ecuador.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and take them through, right?
And you just got paid a percentage per person?
Yeah, like not to be honest, bro. I actually just wanted to help these guys.
Yeah.
I didn't make any real money.
Oh,
off of it,
okay.
bro.
Gotcha.
Maybe $500 per guy.
Yeah.
But 20 go through. You make a little bit of money. But yeah. Okay. So after this, I'm actually in Ecuador when I get introduced to Colombia for the first time. So 2020, the end of 2020, I'm in Quito in Ecuador, and one of my buddies from back home, the Cuban guy, he hits me up and he says, I'm going crazy here. Like, the lockdown was so bad in Canada, especially in Winnipeg at one point. So he's like, I need to get the out of here, man. He's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm in Ecuador. He's like, do you want to go to Colombia? And I was like, you know what? I haven't been there. Like, why not? He's like, one of our friends, this girl, we'll name her Kay. She's a national, a Colombian national, but she lives in Winnipeg now. And she was going out there. And I was just going to go to Bogota, right? And she hits me up and she says, you should really check out Cartagena. She's like, I'm going to be in Cartagena. So I said, okay, well, you know what I'll do is when it be right after New Year, so like January 1st, January 2nd, I fly to Bogota myself to check everything out and just check out the country and stuff. And then shortly afterwards, I went to Cartagena. I was there for about a day or two alone, and then my friends start coming in. Now, this is where my life changes. Keep in mind, it's still the pandemic, so everything's closing around midnight. Everything's dead. We go out, we have a good time, whatever. We're walking out. You know, there's a guy outside. He says, hey, you want to come to an after party? Normally, I would say that, you know. But my friends, they were so drunk, and they were having a good time. So I said, you know, okay, let's go. So we, you know, they have their own taxis, right? Like the guys that work for them. And we go to this club, and it looks like nothing from outside, right? You can't tell that anything is inside. And, you know, we get to what looks like a house door. We go inside. There's, you know, a madam, like an older woman working. And then, you know, two cartelitos, right? Like two little guys sitting there, and a group of them. And they pat you down, and we walk through curtains that kind of look like the ones behind me and the ones behind you. And we go down this flight of stairs, and, you know, we open it up, and all of a sudden we're in this club. And, you know, there's a stripper pole with a catwalk across the swimming pool. And you know what I mean? So,
I mean, I'm having deja vu.
Right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, we probably went to the same place.
So you're in a whorehouse. You're the first time you're in Colombia, you walk into one of these places thinking it's going to be like a bar. And you're like, why is every woman in here not only the most beautiful girl I've ever seen,
right,
but basically butt naked?
Yeah. So we get in, and keep in mind it's 12, so there's no one there. We're the only group there.
Right. It's early.
So I said to the guy, I was like, you know, what's going on here, man? Like, there's no one here. He's like, oh, it's 12. Like, we just opened. You know, I was like, oh, okay, that's how it works over here. You guys open when everything closes, okay? And then he's like, but check this out. You know, he goes over, he hits like some alarm or some whatever, it makes some noise. It sounds like some siren goes off, and then the girls come out. And, you know, I'm thinking, like, I'm drunk, but I'm just laughing. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. So what happens is we're all having a good time. We're popping bottles. We're spending a lot of money. We're making friends with everybody. And then there's this one girl, and she's just like a thought. You know what I mean? Like, just, she's hair down to her ankles and fake ass, you know, just like beautiful. Not my type at all. But my buddy loves it. He loves that type, right? But she got sent to me by, you know, whatever, the manager, the owner, or whatever, because it was obvious I was the one with the money. So she comes and she starts talking to me, and I literally say at one point to my friend across from me, I'm like, bro, switch with me. Let me sit with her friend. Her friend, quiet, shy, nerdy, had glasses, like kind of almost looked like a librarian or something like that, and just had no interest in what was going on, was not impressed with the bottles, was not impressed with the flex, was just didn't want to be there. And I liked her.
Sure.
Yeah, I was like, this one's more like me, to be honest, right? That's what I was thinking at the time.
I can take her out of this place.
Oh,
said
that's what happened.
So many young men in a Colombian whorehouse.
Right?
Baby,
I can't be the only one.
I can get you out of here. I love it.
So
it takes me back.
Yeah, I get to know her. One of the first things I said to her, and my Spanish was okay at the time, but it was like broken. So it's basically saying, like, what are you doing in this place? You know, I understand there's a certain type of woman that comes into this place. Like, you don't fit the bill. Right. You know, she said, you know, I'm from Venezuela. You know what it's like out there? She's like, I have 2 kids, right? I have a 3-year-old daughter and I want to say like 10-year-old daughter, and minimum wage is like $5. You know what I mean?
A month. Yeah.
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 So
it's horrendous.
She's like, she told me the whole story, and basically she was groomed, right? She had a girl that moved from Venezuela down there, and lied to her, you know, in the beginning. She wasn't stupid or anything like that, but she said, I'm working at this club. It's full of tourists. You'll be serving. whatever.
Right.
So by the time she gets to the club, bro, because she goes the illegal route, right?
Yeah.
She goes on the little boat and through the jungle and whatever the else.
Spent all her money probably
Exactly.
to get there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we spent the next couple of days in Cartagena, my group of friends, and we would go back there. I liked the girl. I was not on a love thing though. I just liked spending time with
Man
her.
måste
Didn't
hitta
wanna
först
fuck her,
gubben
nothing
i
like that.
BRD,
Just,
sen får man ett
just wanted
follow-up
to chill with
quest
her.
där.
So-
Alltså man har gjort massa quest i Burning Steps, sen fick man hitta gubben i BRD, jag hittade honom. Sen fick jag ett quest, gå och lämna den här noten till gubben i Burning Steps. Sen fick jag gå tillbaka till BRD för att lämna den här bajsen igen. Och nu har jag 2 Marshall Windows Lost Information, 2 stycken som jag måste hitta. Och de 2 får man av 2 bossar i BRD som typ ingen vill döda. Så att och den BRD-gruppen jag hade nu disbandade för det var pain in the ass. Healen leftade så vi 4-mannade instansen så gott vi kunde. Så nu måste jag hitta en ny BRD-grupp så jag får se om jag gör det imorgon, tror jag. Jag pallar inte mer.
We go back a
Men
couple of
Onyxia
nights,
Prequest
and then I
i alla
get an
fall
email
bra.
saying that they're about to shut down all the flights between Latin America and Canada. So we got to get the out. Now, I'm thinking to myself, the last night that I was there, so this is like 3 days after I met her, I told her, I'm like, I'm going to get you out of here. I said, I don't give a what you do. You don't got to come with me. I'll get you back to Venezuela. I'll put some money in your pocket, like I'll give you 10, 15 grand. You can start your own business, whatever the it is. I just want to get you out of here. You're not happy here. You don't make any money for this place. I can tell just by looking at
She
you.
just didn't want to fuck a lot of guys.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
she
if
didn't.
you don't
She
make
felt
any
like-
money.
And I end up talking to one of the bosses, right? Like the guy that runs the place, when I asked for permission, because you know how it is. Some of them are on contract; they can't just leave. But I did ask permission from the guy, and it was a cartel
fan.
place. Most of those places are, especially on the coast, big tourist money out there and stuff, right?
Största
So I asked him, I'm like,
pallar inte.
is it okay if she leaves with me? And we talked for about 10, 15 minutes, and eventually at the end he said, I don't see any problem with it. It's like, you're absolutely right. She doesn't belong here. Get her out of here. Whatever. So I head back to Canada. And at this point, feelings have grown.
You're flying with her back to Canada.
No, I can't, bro. She's
Oh,
Venezuelan,
Of course
right?
not, right?
Yeah, the visa.
So you just got out of there, gave her a bunch of money.
In that time, I sent her to Bogota. Like I said, I made a couple of friends that worked inside one of the hotels there. So they kind of watched over her and made sure that, someone didn't jump on her because, I didn't know the way things worked out there. I left immediately. I bought a ring. So I was not planning to propose to her right away, but I fell in love with her.
How long after you flew back to Canada did you return
2
to
weeks.
Colombia?
The
Okay, that's
minute
it.
they let me
Okay.
out that hotel, I left.
Gotcha.
I think I spent 1 or 2 days visiting my friends because I'm like, yo, guys, I met this woman. Like, I'm going to Colombia, And you can imagine what they thought. Like, you're nuts, man. You met someone that worked in a place like this, and I get it. I get it. I would never think that something like that could happen. And I would probably make fun of somebody that did the same
Right.
thing that I did. I get out there. 2 weeks later, like I said, I got a different room. I went, I showered. And then this was the most important moment for me, bro. It was when I knocked on her door for her room. And that was going to tell me right there, is this real? Or is this just a game, right? And she opened and she just started bawling. And she jumped on me and hugged me. And just kept saying, te extraño, like I miss you. And I proposed to her that night on the balcony, a hotel in Zona T in Bogota. And then that started a whole nother chapter for me.
Wow, and you're married to this day?
Legally, yeah.
Wow.
But I left her last year. I left everything, including, the criminal life and everything else. A year ago today, like I was mentioning to you earlier, a year ago today, I left Colombia. I left my marriage. I left the criminal life. Left money behind. Lost. We'll probably have to talk this a little bit more in depth. But that same day or the same week, I lost $250,000, which was all my money at the time.
Okay, so yeah, we got to know about this. What was happening after you proposed to her? She said yes. Bring us until you left Colombia. What were you doing?
I'm gonna try and give the shortest version of this because it's so much. Like we were only together about 2 years, but like holy, we went through a lot, right?
Yeah.
We bounced country to country. I ended up reconnecting with my brother in Mexico after 5 years, 6 years not seeing him. Brought her out there. Met his wife. He had a baby with her. Great time. Probably one of the best moments of my life. Going back to Mexico, seeing my brother, having a wife with me, and just like this whole family thing. It was beautiful. Craved it my whole life. We got married in the Bahamas, I want to say 4 months later after we met. And then throughout this time, though, I'm trying to find somewhere for us to live. Because we're basically living in Colombia and visiting other countries, right? But we can't do this forever, you know? She could go through the refugee status or whatever, or protected status, but it's going to be harder for me, especially because I'm a criminal. I don't want to be under the microscope. I don't want them looking at everything that, you know.
What are you doing? What kind of crime are you running?
At that time?
Yes.
I was still doing money laundering. Yeah. So
whose money are you laundering? Are you from all over the world?
Typically it was from Canada, bro.
Right.
So I'm doing it 3-4 times a year.
Right. Same hustle, same embezzlement hustle. Got it.
So yeah, that was the majority, bro. That was the huge chunk, the lion's share.
Right.
Like I said, it's like 200, sometimes more a year, and that's how I got up to 400. Right.
Right.
If I'm still doing the thing in England once or twice a year, and I'm making 30 to 50K or whatever, and then I'm doing 200, 250 through here.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? And then
that adds up, and that's a huge amount of money in Colombia. You're rich.
Forget about it, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
And where we ended up settling on, so I'm going to get to this, but we end up settling on Paraguay. So I'm looking for places to move that are quick, are not going to put me under a microscope, are sympathetic to the Venezuelans, because you got to use what you have, you know, and they really were. So for anyone that doesn't know this about Paraguay, you can get your permanent residency usually within 70 days. It's good for 10 years. Oh, wow. There's no taxes on foreign income. And it gives you access to Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay.
Yeah.
Same rights.
Wow.
So if you want to go to school, if you want to start a business, buy real estate, you can do it in all those places. So I'm like, this is ideal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very expensive at that time either. Do you know what I mean? It was like for the whole package, like paying the corruption's big there. Right?
Yeah,
so
totally. You can see
pay
why.
Some lawyers.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it right away. Like, we're here. We found the country. We found where we're going to live. We can stop bouncing between countries. I can walk away from because I wanted to walk away, bro. She had kids, you know, and the kids were going to come with us.
Where were they living at the time?
They were in Venezuela.
Okay.
Yeah, they were with her sister in their family house. And then throughout the next year, some stuff happens. We get in some fights over really stupid
Is your money stashed in the same box to where you originally got it?
Yeah, for about 4 years.
How much money you got in there at this point?
At that
your
point,
nest egg.
It wasn't a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was like, at that point, it was probably like 70K. 70,
What did you
80K.
want to do with getting out of the life? You know, like
I had plans. So I had plans in Paraguay. But I just want to, like, before we get to that, I got to tell you how this whole story ends.
Okay.
Because I was forced to walk away, even though I was on my way out. It happened at a time that I didn't expect it to. So whatever, we get in these fights. Then I go nomad. I start going. I want to say early 2022. In the span of a month and a half, I was on 4 different continents. I was, I don't know, in 10, 15 different countries, and I was just spending like crazy. And I was broken up with my wife at the time, like I wasn't with her, and I was bringing friends out everywhere, and I was walking away from a lot of stuff. It was a bad place for me.
And you weren't making any money? You weren't hustling at all?
I still had the embezzlement thing going,
Right.
which was the lion's share.
Yeah.
It's like money coming in.
So how does that work real quick? So you're embezzling out of a company in Canada. Do you have to give a percentage to your contacts up there?
No, because I bought it.
Right.
So one thing that I mentioned earlier on was like...
So you're just stealing money and then hiding it. You're not really... This is not classic money laundering where you're taking it from one source and disguising it. You're just jacking money and hiding it.
Well, no, we
You're
did
not
do
trying
that
to-
as well.
so
But
explain
for
Yeah.
my share of the money, no, it was just it was moved through several different accounts in Canada, and then a lot of it would come out in cash from me. Right. And then we had other ways of doing stuff too. Like I don't bring it up because we didn't do it very often, but like, you know, diamonds, right? Gold.
Really? What do we? How so? What about them?
Man, like there's a lot you can get away with going through an airport, bro. Wearing a Rolex watch that's worth 30, 40 grand. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like stuff like that.
So you're taking stolen goods through, or
no? Some of them would be legitimate, like with sales, like and everything like that. Like a lot of it was washing money through that kind of stuff too.
So how are you? But explain that. This is what we have you here for.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Okay, so I pay a guy to go and buy whatever, a Rolex watch, a nice presidential or whatever, 30 grand, 25 grand watch. I pay him a little bit extra.
Yeah.
He goes and does the sale through a legitimate account.
Yeah.
Right? His own account or a business account or whatever. I give him a little extra piece for it. But, you know, he signs it over to me and then it's all legitimate.
You just washed it,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Or I went at gambling.
Yeah.
Or whatever the else.
Right.
And then I take it over there and I sell it. Like I would do little, but I didn't do that very often.
Right.
But it did happen a few times, right? And same with I didn't personally do it, but I had some friends that were doing it with gold, right? Like they'd buy those little the little bars of gold.
Yeah.
And they'd stack up a bunch of them, and some of them would buy them from Dubai, right? They can't bring them down to Winnipeg, sell them for an extra cost, and then some of the other guys were taking that gold, bringing it to Panama or wherever else and selling it off there, right?
Interesting. So if you're in Winnipeg, let's say, you buy legally purchased gold bricks from a guy in Dubai.
Yep.
And then you could sell that off in Panama and declare it as legal. Or you could just have it sitting in gold, whatever you want. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
The biggest thing that I noticed, again, this was a lot with other people because I didn't have to do it as much because I had a lot of my money was coming from a legitimate company, right?
Right.
Like it was just we were embezzling it. It was illegal.
So
but
you were in on it with the CFO.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you were
CFO was in my hands.
and you were leaning on him.
Yeah.
Through threat of violence or
no, more
blackmail?
extortion in the beginning, blackmail.
Blackmail?
Because this person was very shady. It wasn't a, you know, it wasn't somebody to feel sorry for.
So did you threaten them to like go public with some dirt that you had on them?
No, that happened at the end. That's
Okay.
when everything ended for me.
Okay.
So remember, we had plans to move to Paraguay.
Yeah.
So November of let's say late October of last year, 2022. I'm in Cucuta. We're at the Venezuelan border. She's waiting to get the last of the documents that we need for her kids. I believe it was a passport and a birth certificate for the other daughter, and permission from the father so that she could leave the country to live somewhere else. So on that same trip, when I fly in from Winnipeg to Bogota, when I get to Bogota, I'm there for 1 or 2 nights, airport by the hotel, I get a cryptic message from my fixer in Panama. And this is a guy that took care of things when I was not there for me, right? He was actually a taxi driver, but he worked like hand in hand with the cartels. And he was just a straight up guy. Like, this is the kind of guy you want to roll with you. I wish I had someone like him in Winnipeg because I would have took over the city. You know, not literally, but like that's how you feel when you have someone that good